All right, going live in 3, 2, 1. Welcome everybody to episode 3 of Mix It Up with ML, a podcast where we try to touch on everything and give it a little something for everybody. So today I'm super excited to have my friend Andrew Hama here today. Thanks for joining us, Andrew.
Good to be here.
So Andrew is a junior at Princeton University, so class of 22, I believe. And Andrew, because we're not famous yet, maybe we'll be famous someday, who knows, but people might not know how we met. So please feel free to just kind of share that backstory so people have some context for the combo.
Yeah. My freshman year, I joined the club basketball team on campus. That's how I know Tito. Yeah. Super great guy. Club basketball is a very important part of my freshman experience. And so I've gotten to see him the past couple of years. So that's how we met.
Love it. And so, bro, are you an officer in club basketball right now? Is it Chuck and you or just you?
Yeah, so it's very interesting. We don't have a defined officer group, but it's
Right.
basically Chuck, me, and Benny.
Got it.
Yeah.
So you guys are keeping it alive. I love to hear it in the COVID era, keeping it alive. So hopefully that gets back to it soon. But all right, dude, let's just jump right into it. I have a bunch of questions because my bro Andrew is a very interesting guy. So I'm really excited to just hear more about your experiences. So let's get into it. All right. So, brother, your family is from Ghana. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so do you have, the majority of your family in the United States or a majority in Ghana, or is it a little mix or people everywhere? What's that sort of backstory? Because then I know you moved to Georgia for high school. You were in Georgia for high school. So I just want to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So basically, I was born in Ghana, actually. I moved to the United States pretty early on as a toddler. And then I went back for a bit and then I came back again when I was around 6 or 7. So I've definitely been back and forth quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
My entire family is in Ghana for the most part. I mean, I have my nuclear family is here, obviously, but when it comes to extended aunts or grandparents are all in Ghana, and I have a few cousins and aunts and uncles in the States as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that whole experience is interesting. I mean, just going back and forth and seeing the differences was crazy.
Right.
And then also the fact that when I came originally, I was a toddler, so I was fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to Ghana for a bit. I went to Ghana for kindergarten, first grade.
Okay.
Came back, did first grade again because I was young. So I did
in the United States. Came back to the United States.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I was early for first grade in Ghana, but young for the US. So I did first grade again, and I'm still young for my grade. So it's really weird.
Didn't know that either. How old are you?
Yeah, I'm 21, but March apparently is kind of youngish, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But the funny thing is, so I came back and I was really into reading. So I came back because my Ghanaian accent was so thick. They thought I was terrible at English.
Okay.
So I actually got put in the ESL class. English is a second language class.
Damn.
Even though the official language of Ghana is English because we're a British colony. So that was an interesting experience.
So you said you came back, forgive me, I'm just trying to keep it straight in my mind. Yeah. So when you came back to Ghana, you were put in the ESL class or
when I came back to US, it's Georgia. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So you were born in Ghana, came to the United States, then went back.
Yeah. And then came back again.
And then came back again. And so do you mind if you're comfortable sharing a little bit why that was? Was there a particular reason why you bounced back and forth? Or just interested in that?
Yeah, for sure. My dad had just finished business school late 90s. So he was working. My mom was finishing up a residency, actually.
Your mom's a doctor? No way.
Yeah,
what kind of doctor?
She's I think the name is internist.
Yeah, internal med. Same as my mom, dude.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, that's dope. That's very dope.
Great.
Yeah. So, so she was finishing that up. It was a grind, obviously.
Right.
My dad was grinding. So they sent me to live in Ghana with my grandmother for a year with my sister, who's younger than me by 3 years.
Okay.
I was there for about a year and some change.
Right.
And my mom wrapped up her residency and everything else and then came back here.
Understood. Okay. So, got it. So your parents, did they meet in Ghana or did they meet in America?
So they met in Ghana.
Okay.
I think early 90s, I want to say. I'm pretty brilliant on the love story situation.
Right.
But they met in Ghana, and then my dad came to the US with my mom in 98, I want to say.
Okay.
With a briefcase of $400. That was
crazy. Crazy, bro. Wow. Shout out to them for just crushing it too, dude, in business school and in residency and becoming a doctor. That's amazing. That's really cool. Okay. So yeah. And then we connected. I remember you texted me about like the LinkedIn post I had just posted the other day, right? About, so just for the listeners, in case they don't know, I'm working for an early literacy nonprofit in New York City, where basically we distribute books through pediatric checkups to like infants and children like birth to 5. And you had texted me saying that you had done an early literacy like event in Ghana. Could you tell me just a little bit more about that? I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. So to give you more input, I guess more backstory, I went to Ghana growing up probably every other year. I went for like half the summer. So I was always in and out. I had a good feel for the culture, which I really appreciate from my parents. And the year before my sophomore year, I went, and my parents were kind of like big on me to like, you know, like, how are you going to like help your community, right? Like, how can you make an impact? How can you like make things better? This is sophomore year of high school. Okay. So we're thinking about that. We went to go visit my extended family. So the way it works is that Ghana in general is like pretty developed. Okay. So
it's in West Africa, right? Like kind of West right Africa, next to Nigeria. Okay.
Exactly. So Ghana is actually one of the most, if not the most politically, economically stable country in sub-Saharan Africa. I mean, it's like debatable, but like, we have a long relationship with the United States. Presidents come, like it's a very solid area.
Got it.
But I have family in like the extended areas and like what you call the villages, where it's like very, very rural. Like my dad grew up on a farm, for example. Wow. He actually said one time his 10th birthday, I got like a book or something, right? And I was like crying because my friends were getting like bicycles and stuff. My dad's like, I got an egg for my 10th birthday. I was like,
it's an egg. Man. Right. Okay.
But anyway, so we went to go visit the family there.
Okay.
I mean, weird turn of events, I ended up eating something crazy, some crazy meat. My stomach was killing me. I was having some ridiculous like gastrointestinal situations, right? Crazy.
Rough situations. Bad seeds. Bad seeds. Right.
Bad seeds. And I couldn't find a hospital forever. And I ended up going to like finding a children's hospital, and like there were no books in there, which is really weird because in the US there are always books in the waiting rooms. My dad started speaking to me about it. He also spoke to me about like literacy in general in Ghana, especially rural Ghana. So I was like, that's weird. So I came back to the States. I was like, how can I make a difference? I ended up doing this whole book drive thing where I basically raised a bunch of books to collect a bunch of books, a few thousand, shipped them over to Ghana. And then I used like my family, like extended family, to like basically help one of the local hospitals set up like a little library within like the waiting room.
Dude, wow. That's basically reach out and read, you know, but just in Ghana, which is super dope. And, you know, like kind of crazy that you did the same thing that I'm doing. And it's just
super crazy.
Wow, bro. Good for you also. Just, you know, thinking of that. And, you know, I could go on, you know, for days about it because I'm super passionate about it and working in it. But, you know, you could just think of it as literacy is kind of the way they talk about it in our line of work is just as, you know, a foundational skill to unlock everything else in life. Right. And it's one of those preventative, you know, interventions that you can do early on to help somebody later in their life. So good for you for doing that, man. And
exactly.
Yeah, that's
one
great.
Crazy thing as well is that like the doctor to patient ratio in the United States is 1 to 400. In Ghana, it's 1 to 10,000. So that means you're spending more time in the waiting room because there's less doctors available. Right. So it becomes even more crucial that you have access to like literacy, so you can like do something while you're there.
Right. So. Right. Wow, bro. So thanks for shedding some light on that, on your family situation. And so that's really interesting. And do your parents kind of have a lot? It sounds like you have a very strong contact with your family still back there because you were going back every summer. And I imagine your parents are going back kind of at a similar, you know, clip there. And so what's that been like? Just like maybe the differences in Ghanaian culture and American culture. And could you just talk a little bit about that, what that experience has been like?
So many different angles. Like it's really impacted my life a ton. I think there are a few things. I think the first thing is just like when I go back, it's like I'm the American guy who's back. So it's like my family is always like laughing like my accent, like just joking around, like just
right,
like, you know.
Right.
But like my accent, like like the American guy, so like he's like dripping out in like t-shirts and stuff, like because like I'm wearing like I don't know, say I'm wearing like a Kobe shirt or something, right? Like typically the way it works is that like, especially for sports fashion, like, or like sports in general, whatever is like big now will probably get the like in a couple of years.
Okay.
So you'll see like people right now rocking like KD OKC jerseys.
Like, okay.
It's like mad.
Right.
So that kind of thing is what ends up happening. So it's just fun. Like people always like, it's always a point of like conversation. Kind of like if you're in the US and you see a British person, it's like, oh, this is different.
Right.
So that was cool. And it's also cool to like be able to be ingrained in the culture because I could speak the language, some of the languages there. So that was also fun. But yeah, that's the first part, just going back. The second part of the experience was coming to the States. And the weird thing about the going back and forth is that because like my family is like very distinctly African, like it's just like very culturally African. Like I go there all the time, like for sure. It was very interesting for me, like when I moved to Georgia, because I was
going to ask you about that next, dude. Keep going.
Exactly.
Keep going.
So I live in suburban Atlanta, and where I live, so Georgia is a very dynamic place.
Right.
So basically, you have Atlanta. You have a perimeter around Atlanta that everyone calls like the perimeter. So if you're within the perimeter, you're basically like part of Atlanta. Okay. You have Metro Atlanta a little bit around that. And you have this basically line like right here, where if you cross this line, you're in the zone where Black people don't go.
Okay.
And I lived like on that line.
Wow. Fascinating, dude. Okay.
Crazy. So my school was, for example, in what's called Forsyth County, which is like historically a place where Black people weren't there until 1993.
Okay.
So in 1912, they kicked out all Black people. We came back in 1993. So
wow.
The whole situation.
Lambert High School, right? For the listeners.
Lambert High School.
Okay.
But then like south of that is like Atlanta, where it's like, like a lot of Black people, like it's lit. So it's interesting for me because like, as someone who like is thoroughly an immigrant, it's hard for me to identify with like what culture I belong to, because I'm not like a Caucasian American, but I also don't feel like I have the same like culture as like a Black American. So it took me a while to like really find like my space.
Right. And what was your space?
I really didn't find it until like, I don't think I even had a space. Like my friend groups were very mixed. I didn't for example, because like I'd oftentimes be the only Black person in my classes or with my friend groups, like I'd be like the kind of spokesperson for like Black America. But like, I feel like I wasn't even qualified to speak on that, right? So
interesting.
So I just kind of mixed around. And I think it's beneficial for me because I never really understood like how deep stuff went until I got to college. So I was kind of naive to stuff. But it also gave me like a dope perspective in that I could see like beyond like the US bubble in a way, which is pretty fun.
Right. Bro, so much to touch on there, trying to collect my thoughts here. So, I was going to ask you about Georgia and what that was like. And so as far as you mentioned, sort of not feeling like you're able to speak for the Black American perspective, did you feel any shifts in that or like more understanding when you went to Princeton? And if so, like what did you learn, or just what has that journey kind of been like for you, especially now with like everything going on? What has that been like for you? And I know you're a part of like the Black Men's Association at Princeton.
Yeah,
with Jared,
I'm on board now, which is fun. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to hear more about it.
For sure. I guess I'll retouch on Georgia because the transition is like, I guess it makes sense a bit.
Yes, sir.
So it's funny. Again, my county is like back in the day, you don't go to my county, like you just don't. So I grew up in a place where like people were just like very, very strong in their beliefs. Whether those beliefs were like something you don't agree with or like potentially harmful is what they were. But one of the things that it taught me, right? My county was like 2% Black. My high school was like 0.8% Black.
I saw that online. I was looking it up. Yeah.
Exactly. And like it was 3,500 kids. So it's like a big school. One of the things it taught me is that like there's really no problem that like conversation can't solve, in my opinion. I think maybe I'm naive, but I think everybody has some kind of like, most people don't have like an evil agenda going for them. They just have like ignorance, they have naivety, they have things they just don't know about. So I think it's more of the fact that there's like a lack of communication or a lack of understanding than it is like hostile, like deep-rooted hostile, like intentions that like just like manifest throughout the entire life. I think it's just like, it's learned behavior kind of thing.
Wow.
So that's something that because I was in such like looking back on it, probably a pretty dangerous environment in terms of like the things that were being said and like what was being, believed. I had like a really, really like nuanced understanding of like racial relationships, I would say. So when I came to Princeton, I never really had like in Georgia, I never really had like a big Black friend groups because like besides like my sports teams, like there was no one else.
It's sports side counted, yeah.
Right, there was no one else. So when I got to Princeton, that kind of changed because it's a very different place than my team, Georgia. It's like completely different.
Right.
So like I was just like, frankly, there's a lot more Black people, right? So like to go from 0.8% to 13% is like, it's like definitely people who are coming from the opposite situation, but for me, I was like, this is pretty cool.
Right.
So I just met a lot more people, kind of like got more ingrained in my culture, like learned more about what it means to be a Black American through different clubs, through just like reflecting through classes.
Right.
And as I did that, I realized that like a lot of things I was okay with in high school, I probably shouldn't have like let slide.
Interesting.
And I also realized that like, even though I do feel like an outsider in some respects as an immigrant, like I do have my own like niche in the Black community, and like I can also understand them a lot more. So I just like having a lot more friends, being involved in PBMA, right, and having programming specifically to help like Black men on campus feel more involved, more inclusive. I think that helped a lot, to be honest.
Bro, I love it. I love it. Super interesting perspective there. Especially, I want to touch on what you said about feeling like it's learned behavior a lot of times as opposed to, innate hostility. Would you say that you're the, majority in thinking that, or the minority within the Black community in America? Like whether it's Black African or Black American, what would you say about that?
Yeah, I actually don't know. I think I'm probably in the majority, to be honest.
Okay.
The difference is that people like know theoretically, but in practice, it's hard to bridge that until you're there. Mm-hmm. When you see people who like will say stuff online that's like legitimately very problematic, but you meet them in person and they're like, you can tell they have like a soft, kind heart, like deep in there somewhere. Right. So I think people think that, they just don't, like, they don't truly believe it until they see it manifested out.
Right.
So I would say that. And then one other thing as well, like within the African community, when it regards to like racism, is like very, very interesting, because like there are a lot of Africans who like feed into this like idea that like Black people are like, Black Americans are like inferior for whatever like reason, because they've been told that as immigrants. So yeah, as an immigrant, you get told like, oh, you're the good Black, like you're like whatever, like don't be like one of those Black people.
Wow.
Even within the Black community, Africans sometimes don't understand what it means to be like they get racially profiled. They don't understand the history behind it, like what it means, like the struggles of Black Americans. So there's also that dynamic where like conservative like African parents are just like, oh, just like go through it, like tough it out. Which is like very interesting.
So do you feel like African immigrants, like parents, are typically more conservative as opposed to liberal? And was that your case? And also, I just wanted to know, what brought your parents to Georgia, for example, like Forsyth County, and was that work, or did they choose to go there? And what was their sort of perspective in all of that? Did they talk to you about the experience there, or all that?
Yeah. I'll touch on the first thing first, around like conservative.
Yeah.
African parents are definitely more conservative. I think Africa in general is like a pretty conservative place. I'm from like a very Christian family, so like that, I guess that plays into a little bit, although I think you can be like, I don't think it really matters honestly when it comes to like political beliefs.
Right.
So yeah, my parents are like fairly conservative. I think it's also just kind of like conservative almost out of like fear, like you don't want to like speak up too much or like offend anyone. And when you're in an environment that's like very conservative, they kind of just like assimilate to whatever that is.
Right.
Like literally to the point where like my aunt, who lives in Ghana right now, she was straight up just sending me like all these different like what is what's that news network, like American News Network or whatever.
Oh, One American News.
Yeah, the one that Trump always tweets about.
Yeah, I think it's probably One American News.
Yeah, one of those. She was sending me these things. She was like, "Why are Black people wilding so much?" I was like, "Oh gosh," but like they just don't know, right? It's just like
right.
Like, they just hear what they hear and they just believe it. So like it's like legit, like it's just very weird. So I think that's kind of like the general demographic.
Right.
And then within my family, how we went to Georgia, I think my dad got a scholarship to come to Ghana to go to business school in Clark, which is like a HBCU in Atlanta. Okay. So he was here. My mom was like, okay, like if you're gonna be there, I'm also gonna like pull up to Georgia as well. So she got a residency at another HBCU in Georgia.
Amazing.
Because they'd already both gotten like their advanced degrees in Ghana, but they had to get it again in the US for like certification purposes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So your mom was like already a doctor in Ghana, and then she went to residency in the United States. Jeez, bro.
And she wasn't even that old, because in Ghana, you don't like, it's not like you go to like general undergrad, then you like specialize. Like she specialized since she was like 20. Like she was going to medical school since she was like 20.
Right.
Ridiculous.
So wow.
Yeah. So
it's a lot of work, man.
It's a lot. And she was working in Grady, this hospital called Grady, in Atlanta, which is like the trauma hospital. Like it's like Atlanta's like can be a dangerous place. So if you get shot, you go to Grady, and that's where she was working.
Wow.
So she was like grinding during her residency, like pulling crazy hours.
And did she know English? Because you said Ghana's an English-speaking country. Did her and your dad know English before coming for their business and medical, training, or did they learn it just sort of on the fly?
No, that would have been crazy. That would have been crazy. Because I think so. Typically, the way it works is African countries typically adopt like the culture and the language and the education system of the colonizer country, to put it frankly, right? Yeah. So Ghana, Nigeria, all English-speaking countries, like you learn English from the ground up. You learn the UK system of English. So like they spell things differently. They use rubbish, stuff like that.
Right.
So they knew English through and through. If you were from like the Congo or something else, it's like a French colony, then you have to learn English.
Right. Got it. Wow. Bro, so, that's incredibly interesting. And I wanted to also touch on another thing that you were mentioning before, just about, you think that conversation will, by and large, in most cases, be able to, heal situations. And, when that you had seen somebody say something online and then you went to talk to them, has that ever happened to you in like real life?
So many times.
I'm sure, but I just wanted to, not assume. And, could you walk us through that? And because I don't know, I'm just interested in this, bro, because, and this is related to everything that we've been talking about, is my friend Tammy, who's like my best friend. And I think Tammy, I'm pretty sure. May have from Jared connected you guys and everything, which is amazing. I love it. Yeah. But Tammy was telling me about this term like Afro pessimism, where like basically you're just pessimistic about the state of things and feeling like not much is going to be able to solve these racial tensions, which, bro, are just, tearing our country apart in a lot of ways. And I can really sympathize with that and understand why people would feel that way. And Tammy was talking about how, economic empowerment is one of like the few ways that we're going to be able to get out of this situation. So I'm also going to ask you about very shortly. But yeah, could you just kind of, do you feel like you subscribe a little bit to the Afro pessimism, or do you feel like more optimistic about it? And just, I would love to get your thoughts on all that, dude.
Yeah, I think a lot of this again comes from like immigrant background. So I have like a really optimistic view on things. It's honestly naive to put it frankly. I just don't have like the learned experiences of a lot of like people in this country. But I'm pretty optimistic. I mean, to go back to like the parent thing, like my parents, because they just didn't know like what even like racial tensions were back in the day and how deep it went. Like they didn't know Forsyth County was like that crazy until they moved there, and like their friends were like, yeah, like what, like what are you doing? Yeah. Like we're not coming to visit you guys. Right. So I think that kind of fed into me, and I also think that because like I grew up in like not the worst you can have it, but like pretty bad for a Black American. For me, it's like only up or here. So like that's why I'm pretty optimistic.
Right.
Just because like I'm talking like open, just like N-word, hard R usage, like in school, like just like with like classmates and stuff. Like, so like you just get decent, like unfortunately you just like only up from there, right? Afro pessimism, I see that a ton.
Understandable, right? Understandable.
Yeah. I personally, I'm just like a very optimistic person. Again, probably naively so. So I don't subscribe to it necessarily. I definitely sympathize with it, right? I think conversation is huge. I think it's hard also to have conversation when the person's bringing like hostile energy to the table. And I think that's one thing a lot of like Black Americans are afraid of, is that like I have this conversation with this person like who sometimes sees me as like less human than them.
Right.
Like, I don't know how I'm able to do this. Right. So I think, conversation and education are like two really big things. And obviously economic empowerment is like the booster that can really help.
Right.
But for Black Americans, right, like there's a long history of them is like trying something, get crushed, try another thing, like right, like Tulsa, right? The whole Tulsa thing, like
exactly.
So many things happen throughout history that make it tough. But I think like I'm an optimist just because being a pessimist is like not fun. I think that's the only reason why, honestly.
Right. So. Right. Well, bro, that's, I appreciate your perspective, and I love just kind of asking my friends where they stand on this issue. And I don't know, I've been thinking about it a lot because just even going back, like I've always actually like surrounded myself with people who kind of don't look the same as me as much as I could. I actually come from, majority white town for sure. Mm-hmm. But it's just I've been trying to, get different perspectives and see what people, just think about all this going forward. And I don't know, it's been some sense of me. I'm thinking like, is it mainly something that I have to go talk to other white people about? Like, should it be on Black people's, shoulders to explain themselves? Like, I don't think that they need to explain themselves, but I don't know. Just interesting things that have obviously been brought to the table with, everything that was going on around the country this summer, bro. But thanks for, giving me your thoughts on that. It's very interesting. And sort of on that economic empowerment, idea, I want to ask you all about, your major and, your work experiences and like specifically Tiger Capital Management. It looks really cool. And I know my boy, Mike Peters is involved. He was involved with that with you. Right. So just wanted to ask you, one, could you tell me a little bit more about that, specific experience that you have, but then also what got you interested in finance in the first place? And I'll stop there because I have a bunch more follow-up questions, but just tell me more about that, dude.
I can talk about things I can talk about for days. Economics, finance, race, I can talk about. So let's do basketball.
Yeah.
So for context, I'm an econ major at Princeton, minors in CS and finance, although I might drop the CS minor, we'll see. Right. But that's the situation. And so there's this group on campus called Tiger Capital Management. We're unaffiliated with Princeton, for the record. We're just a bunch of students who like to invest.
I didn't know that it was unaffiliated, actually, bro.
Yes, there are some complications there regarding like tax liability that like universities want to get involved in. So we just kind of like do our own thing. Mm-hmm. The way TCM works, TCM Tiger Capital Management, we are an investment fund run by students, managed by students. Sick. And we're a nonprofit. So we don't take home any like dollars. We keep it all in the fund. It's like an endowment. And then we like use the returns, some of the returns to like fund education for our members, like things like that, like events around campus, that whole thing.
That's sick.
So we manage, so basically the way it works is I got in my freshman year. We recruit people their freshman year, sometimes sophomores. And I was blessed and lucky enough to kind of like go all the way through, and now I'm CEO. So I kind of like run 30 people with some a good chunk of change to manage.
Right.
Which is pretty crazy to think about. So the way we work is we have anywhere between 25 to 30 people. We have 5 industry groups. So we cover healthcare, industrials and energy, consumer, TMT, so like semiconductors, like that whole thing, and then software and internet. So like more capital light or I guess asset light businesses.
Right.
And what we do is we invest. So we pitch a stock every week that we've researched for several weeks beforehand.
Okay.
We vote as a club whether or not we want to invest in that stock. Damn. And then if the stock passes, then we put it into our portfolio, we buy it. And we like hold it for typically a couple of years. We reevaluate it. It's a very rigorous process. Like I've learned so much from it. More than any class by far.
Don't let the Princeton admin hear that. Don't let them hear that. But I love it.
Princeton is an amazing place for thinking, but like when it comes to applying these things,
right?
If you don't go to like a business school, you have to learn it by yourself, and that's what we do.
So, okay. Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about like what you've learned, and you know, I'm definitely a basic, beginner here with investing and finance. I've been in this medical grind, head down, you know what it is, but I'm super interested in personal finance and investing. So just, break it down for, the basic guy here, but I'd love to hear about what you learned over this time.
I love this stuff. Like I'm genuinely passionate about it, which is like been amazing to find out. So I would break it down like this. So investing in general, right? There's when I think about investing, there's different types of investing. There's short-term investing, there's long-term investing, and then there's like passive investing. There's a whole bunch of different things.
Okay.
Right? To break it down versus passive and active, passive investing is you just buy an index fund or an ETF that is managed by somebody else.
Correct.
Like the S&P 500, and let them like handle it for you, and you just like rock, right?
Right.
For 90% of people, that's like the best way to make your money.
And I think for me too, as a doctor, that's key, that I got to tap into that, right?
100%. I think Americans are in general underinvested. So I think like getting yourself to like buy into like those indexes and like keep it rocking there. Amazing idea. I think the other side of it's active investing. So active management, active investing is actively looking out for companies, stocks, doing your own research, and then investing in those specific names. So instead of an index, a basket of names, investing in one or two specific companies.
Right.
That is really difficult because you can be wrong like really easily.
Yeah.
And it's like almost impossible to beat the index, the S&P 500. So even for the average person, they can definitely like have like one or two active names in their portfolio, but I think they should by and large be passive investors.
Okay.
The reason we're active is one, because it's more fun. Two, because you learn more. So like honestly, we would likely perform decently if we just like bought the S&P and just like chilled, but we're not going to learn anything that way.
Interesting.
Yeah. So by rigorously like pitching companies, like researching them, understanding what make the businesses work, what make industries work, how competitive dynamics play out, how pricing works in different businesses, right? Why Chipotle is able to like bust out 100 customers in their line while like McDonald's is still kind of like turning through people, like that whole kind of thing, all those different dynamics at play, how the world works financially, like all those different things come into play. And I think you learn so much about how businesses work. It's just absurd. Just by researching and like pitching and like rigorously going through them, building Excel models, understanding how like finance works. We have a whole education program that we run for like our new members. It's like 3 to 6 months. We just like teach them everything, like PowerPoints, like we just go through.
Okay.
And I think I've just learned so much through that. So, and it's crazy because like we've been blessed to perform really well. I think we're beating the S&P since inception, which is like honestly
and when was
ridiculous.
inception, Hama?
2016.
Oh, so it's only a 4-year-old.
Yeah, it's not that not that old. Yeah.
Unreal. Okay, keep going.
20, I think. Well, it depends on the year, but 2014 informally, but 2016 was like
Wow, and you guys are beating it.
Yeah, we've done really well. I mean, again, we don't know what's gonna happen in the future, so but luckily we've been killing it.
And when you say pitching, you mean internally? Like, so do you guys pitch to one another at your meetings of like what you should invest in? Or do you pitch elsewhere? Like it would just be to you guys because you guys are the managers of the fund, right?
Yes. And yeah, so we have a pool of capital that we raise through corporate sponsors or through like donors, outside donors, because and so that's the amount of money we manage. And then we've grown that money multiple times over just by like being diligent investors and getting frankly lucky or blessed or in some respect. So yeah, we meet as a group, all 25 of us, typically in like a crowded room somewhere on campus, but obviously now because of COVID is virtual. So yeah, a team, which is typically like 5 or 6 people, pitches the idea that they've been working on. And then we all like debate, we all like ask questions, try to poke holes in it. And then at the end we vote. If it passes a certain threshold of like yeses, then we invest in it and we kind of like size accordingly based on how bullish people are in the company.
Okay, got it. And so I guess going back, before I ask more about that, what got you interested in finance in general? Has this always been something that you were just like super into even in high school or even before, or?
Yeah, my dad was a consultant and he worked a little bit in accounting. So he's a training. So I knew a little bit about finance through him, but like it was never like a thing that I always like thought about in terms of like, oh, I'm gonna like, go into finance or go into investing. I didn't know what investment banking was. I only know what consulting was because my dad was a consultant. Like, I didn't know that much about anything. Yeah. What I did notice though is like going from the US to Ghana and then back and forth, there's just like massive differences in economic structure that like anyone can see. Massive differences in capital formation, right? Like how like simple things like skyscrapers, right? How many of them there are, how developed real estate is, how developed the businesses are, right? Why many Ghanaians don't take out bank loans and buy their houses with cash, right? Things like that you notice pretty early on end up tying themselves to economics or to other fields. And for me, it was economics. So in high school, I thought I was gonna be like an academic, like go into like econ research. I worked in government economic research after senior year of high school for a summer. Okay. It was like really slow. Didn't like it that much, but I learned a lot. And I learned that I really like finance. And I like the nitty gritty. Mm-hmm. Did invest in competition my senior summer as well that like went really well. So I was like, oh, I guess I'm like kind of decent at this.
Right.
And then I got into TCM, and that from there was done. Like, yeah.
Got it. And so, bro, what is capital formation? That term you used earlier. What does that mean?
Yeah, basically capital, money, to put it frankly. So like the formation of money. And what that looks like is in the United States, you have an immense amount of capital formation, right? You have trillions and trillions of dollars that are going into real estate development, going into business development, going into the economy as a whole. Okay. And you see like these little pockets of capital throughout the nation, right? Okay. Whereas in Ghana, you don't see nearly as much capital flowing into the country. Okay. So what ends up happening is because there's not as much capital flowing in, like there's not that much capital created, and you don't see a lot of like formation of businesses, a lot of formation of assets, a lot of formation of real estate. Right. And things are just in general like less developed.
Got it.
So that's like the economic term for what I see as just like, like money not being in everywhere, basically.
Got it. So basically money not being poured into certain areas of the economy, right? Like that would be formation of capital, like putting it into
and then that money is used to form capital. So like buildings, like businesses, like that thing.
Bro, I'm a huge novice to this. I didn't even get to take econ at Princeton because I was just like in this pre-med world. So I'm trying to learn, on the fly. I'm learning right here.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna keep learning.
Is a grind. I understand.
So, okay. So I'm going to ask more questions because I got the guy right here, the guy with the knowledge. So bro, so I'm trying to understand the stock market more and like what is actually happening. Can you walk me through what is rising or lowering a stock's price? Like what is actually happening there? I might sound dumb. People might be listening to this like, what is he talking about? But I actually want to know like the nitty gritty of, isn't there like psychological perception going on of the company? That's what I'm just trying to understand, Hama, because bro, you see like Elon Musk is like smoking weed on a podcast and then Tesla's stock drops, right? And so what is actually going on there? I want to hear it from you to see if I can get this, if I can really understand.
Yes. You're speaking about, oh man.
Okay.
So, and again, like I'm 21 years old. I'm not an expert on this. I'm just like, I'm passionate about it. So I know a little bit, but I don't want to like overextend my expertise. So, but
learning, let's do it.
With that, what I will say is that it's funny in general is because I've been into this for like the past few years. And it's funny that people are really into the markets now because of COVID, because of like everything else going on. So I'm getting texts from people who haven't like touched, like don't even know anything about the markets. Like, yo, should I put like a bunch of money into like GameStop right now?
GameStop, that's just good.
Like, hold on. Let's think a little bit here. But so to answer your question specifically, what makes a stock price move up and down, right? Yeah. So a stock, the way I think we should think about stocks are little slivers of ownership in a business.
Right.
So a stock in general is going to be tied, or should be tied theoretically, to the business itself. Right. So when you own one share of Apple, you own one share of Apple as a company. You're an owner of Apple, essentially.
And their revenue, like you own one share of their revenue for the year, or like all-time revenue, or
you own one. Well, technically, you own one share of their. Technically, their earnings are free cash flow, but you own one share of their earnings, their profits.
Okay.
Profits. Yeah, exactly. Profits. And the stock price should represent the future profits, like in perpetuity, like throughout forever. Right. So if I give you $1, for 100 years, like the stock price should be $100 if you don't discount back to present value. So,
okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Now that's the long term. The problem is that we don't live in the long term. We have short term stuff. Short term stock price movements can be, moved by news, by bad economic results, by psychological factors, by technical factors, right? So on the psychological front, right, COVID happens, people are freaking out, they're going to sell their stocks, right?
And so by selling the stock, that decreases the price? Or
yes, because so the price itself technically is just like it's like an auction, buyer and seller market, right? Mm-hmm. So whenever you have more sellers and buyers, the price is going to go down. When you have more buyers and sellers, the price is going to go up. That match right there. So it's like,
walk me through it, right? I'm slow here. Sure. I'm learning.
For sure.
So more sellers than buyers. We're going to decrease the stock price.
Yeah. So if you think about it like an equilibrium, right? So you have supply going like this, right?
Yeah.
So as the price goes up, suppliers are going to want to sell more, right? Like if like any business, right? If you own an Apple, like a lemonade stand, right?
Yeah.
People are going to pay $20. You're going to sell 100. You're going to sell more because your fixed cost are going to get like, right?
Yeah.
So supply is like this, demand is like this, right? The cheaper something is, the more you want of it typically, right?
Okay.
It's like if Jordans go from like $200 to $100, like I'm going to buy two instead of one, right? Most likely.
Correct.
Right.
Got it.
So you have this like equilibrium, right? So you have this and you have this. So when supply shifts forward and demand stays the same, the equilibrium price, so price is right here, price is right here on this little axis, right?
Yep.
When supply shifts forward, which means more suppliers, the equilibrium price goes down because there's too many people willing to sell the same good, right?
Yeah.
So think about it mechanically. You own your lemonade stand. Someone else sets up right next to you and says, I'm going to sell for $5. You can't charge $20 anymore.
Got it. Because they're going to it's like undercutting the market essentially.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that's all it is.
So more supply, lower
more
cost.
Sellers and buyers. Exactly.
Okay. More sellers and buyers is the same thing as more supply.
Yeah.
So then your cost is going to go down.
Your price is going to go down.
Your price of the stock or the lemonade, in our case, is stock. Okay.
Exactly.
And so more sellers occurs when something like COVID happens because
people are scared.
Because they're worried that they're not going to get a like return on investment going forward. So they want to sell it and make the money that they've made already.
Exactly.
And so then the price of the stock is going to go down. Right?
Exactly. And then here's the psychological part. As it goes down further, right? People jump on and say, oh, stock is tanking. I got to sell out now. Right. And that exacerbates it. And people sell and sell and sell.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And so who's making these stock prices, bro? Is that Apple itself, who like they open the day at a certain price and then they close at a certain price? Like, or is that the average of what everybody's buying it for? Or just how does that
work? Precisely.
The second one.
So
the average.
The second one. Yeah. The second one. And so basically, the way it typically works is that stocks in general are secondary markets. So
secondary markets, what does that mean?
Secondary markets. So it's actually a very interesting thing. So it ties into a lot of issues like divesting and like all these different things, because when Apple has shares, Apple, when they go public, when they IPO, they sell their shares to the public. So they get a one-time cash inflow of money, people buying their shares.
And that's why you want to do it, right? You want to go public to get more money to grow your company, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
But from then on out, they're not the ones selling the shares. So think about it like if you go to GameStop, right, and you buy 2K17, you bring it home to your crib, right, and you sell it to one of your friends, 2K themselves doesn't get any more money from that sale.
Correct.
Only you do.
Yeah. Right.
So the stock market itself is secondary, meaning the company itself doesn't actually get any cash from these different trades. So they don't control the stock price at all.
Understood. That makes sense.
They don't really benefit that much from the stock going up, besides like a lot of like secondary factors.
They don't benefit from the stock going up because people are selling it and they're making the money.
Exactly. I mean, there's some benefits in terms of like a lot of like tangential stuff, but like at its core, theoretically, they shouldn't benefit that much from the stock price going up because they're not,
Right. Damn. And it's only the IPO where they're really getting the benefit.
Exactly. Anytime they sell shares to the public, then they get money. But if not, they're not getting anything from it.
Wow. Bro, there's so much, there's a lot of psychology in this, actually. And I was a psych major. I'm plugging my psychology, right? But there's a lot of psychology in it, as we mentioned, and just basic economics is interesting. I need to take like an online course and just really dive into it. You know what I mean? Because I find this fascinating. I find this really cool.
It's dope. And the biggest piece of advice I can give on the psychology front is just that like short term prices fluctuate a ton.
Yeah.
Long term, they tend to like normalize.
Yeah.
So when everybody's like freaking out, just like take a breath. Like,
correct.
Right?
Correct.
They're freaking out towards the downside or the upside. Like either way, just take a breath.
That's it.
Whenever I see people getting like incredibly worried, like I'm just like, let me step back here and like not overthink things.
And so on that front, bro, I've heard, and I've been reading just my basic readings and stuff, annual return on the stock market, or like if you hold an index fund, for example, 7 to 10% annual return over time, right? Like if you're holding it for decades, it'd be about 7 to 10%. Yeah. Why is that? Why is it that it's 7 to 10% over time?
So can you hear me? I think I glitched for a second.
I can hear you. I think your video glitched for a little bit, but it's good.
Good. Why is that? That's one of the things there's a lot of reasons for that, but I think in general, corporate earnings typically grow at that clip. So typically, I'm oversimplifying things, but typically, the stock market should grow at the rate of corporate earnings, plus or minus a few adjustment factors.
Right.
So if Apple, sells 8% more devices and they keep the costs fixed,
right,
the earnings are going to grow by 8%. Ignoring taxes and other things. That's just basically why.
Okay. But why are their earnings going up, right? Because it's not inflation, right? Because it's adjusted for inflation. And I know that inflation contributes to why, salaries are increasing over time, but why are earnings just growing 7 to 10%? I wonder what that answer is. Maybe you don't know it. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't, that's a deep question. I can put a few hypotheses out there, but I don't know for sure. Maybe there's like an economic PhD out there who has a better idea than I do.
Yeah.
But from my understanding, typically what happens in an index like the S&P 500, which is weighted by the biggest companies, right? Mm-hmm. So the biggest companies hold the biggest share of the index.
For sure.
The best and fastest growing companies, they kind of rise and the slowest ones drop. So over time, you have the best companies who stay in that index. So the companies that drop below 8 to 5, to 3 to 2%, they end up falling below, low, so they drop out of the index.
Right, because the membership in the index is fluctuating, right?
Exactly.
That's another key idea, like for listeners to understand, that I just learned the other day. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that's one big part. Another big thing is interest rates that can play a little bit of a factor in it. Mm-hmm. Simply because if to put it simply, let's say you're getting interest rates are at 5%, right? Typically, you're going to see lower stock prices as a result, just because the alternative savings is more attractive now, right? If I can save and get 5%, I'm putting my money in the stock market, which is more risky. I'm getting 8%. Like I'm most likely going to save more. When I can save and only get 1% or 0.8%,
right?
I don't have any other options. I got my money in the stock market.
Right. Exactly.
Which drives stock prices higher, and the other factors as well. But yeah.
Got it, bro. Fascinating. And I know I'm trying to keep us in time here. I have so many other questions I want to ask you.
I have a little bit of time. I'm fine. So whatever works for you.
Okay. I guess the next 2 questions on this topic, and then we can wrap up with just a couple more things, 1 or 2 more things.
Yeah, feel free.
What are your future goals in finance, or do you have any idea? 1, it's okay if you don't. Totally fine.
Yeah.
Secondly, I saw your Goldman Sachs. You're working at Goldman Sachs this summer, I think. Right?
Yep.
Huge. Congratulations. Is focused on healthcare. Is that true?
Yes, healthcare investment banking. Yeah.
I want to hear about that. So 1, your future goals, and then 2, did you choose that healthcare focus, right? Because I'm interested in healthcare, so I just want to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So for college, really passionate about business. I think I want to be long term. I want to be at a place where I can kind of impact the flow of capital. I think that's really important to me. So
what does that mean for the basic man?
Impact where money goes.
Okay.
Right. So whether that's me investing in businesses and making that decision myself, advising businesses on the flow of capital, I think it's really important to me because, as I mentioned earlier, the whole reason I got into this is seeing money flow into places that it's not been before.
Boom.
So the more you have practice doing that, the more you can redirect it towards different areas.
Yeah.
So far I've been really, really blessed. So thankful for God for this, but had amazing internships. I did consulting my freshman summer, my sophomore summer at really dope firm that I loved.
McKinsey.
So that was pretty sick. And then now this summer I'm going to go work at GS, doing investment banking to get a more financial kind of feel of things. Long term, I'm not entirely sure where I'm going to be and how I'm going to affect the flow of capital, the flow of money. But I think if I'm at a place where I'm consistently learning, I'm consistently getting better and getting sharper, and always improving. That's one big thing for me, always improving. And thirdly, a place where I can literally have a legit impact on businesses, on economies, on society. That's a really cool place for me. So that can take a lot of different forms. I don't know. I think at heart I'm an investor, and we'll see where that takes me. But that's the first part of the question. Second part around GS healthcare. It's very sick. So I did healthcare my last summer when I was in consulting.
Okay.
I worked for my client was in the healthcare field. So that kind of piqued my interest. And when I interviewed for GS, they drew hey, what do you think about the healthcare group? And I was like, yeah, sounds cool.
Yeah.
It's funny because I never wanted to be pre-med. I saw my mom going through the whole grind. I was like, could not be me.
I understand why.
Could not be me. And I just wasn't like amazing at like chemistry or bio or anything like that. So I was like, probably not for me. And now that I find myself like kind of angling back into the healthcare field, this is pretty fun.
Yeah.
So,
bro, keep me updated on what you learned there, because my mom, right? She's a doctor. She was always saying, don't go into medicine, like go into, if you like healthcare, go into some sort of like healthcare consulting or healthcare business. So maybe I'll live vicariously through you and learn some lessons there, bro. So super dope. I love the motivation for going into finance, bro. And now sort of at our end here, just asking a little bit about Andrew outside of, the classroom, outside of business. My listeners know you're a big basketball guy, so we have that in common. But one, I saw you speak Chinese. Can you explain that? That's unreal. Very cool. And then two, just sort of what are the things that you like to do outside of all these other pursuits? You're obviously a very talented guy, but any other, hobbies or interests or just things you do for fun? Love to hear about it.
Yeah. First on China, Mandarin Chinese. Yeah. I got to Princeton and I took Spanish in high school. And I was like decent at it, but it was like high school language, so you don't learn that much, to be honest.
Classic.
Classic. Yeah. So I get to Princeton, I'm like, okay, what can I learn? And I always want to learn Chinese.
I think you glitched a little bit, bro. And we can cut this out. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Always wanted to learn Chinese when you got to Princeton.
Yeah, so I was like, I've always thought it was an interesting language. I know it's very difficult to learn. It's one of the most difficult languages to learn. Tens of thousands of characters, right? And it's not like English where it's like phonetic or you can kind of like sound out characters. It's like pictographic, basically. Yep. So it's just like characters and you have to like know what they mean or you don't know what they mean. You can't really use context clues either. You just gotta like really know. So I was like, they have 1 billion people, right? They have one of the fastest growing economies in the world, if not the fastest growing economy in the world. And I like the culture, right? I know some friends who are Chinese, is a dope culture.
Yeah.
So got to Princeton, I took the class. I took it for 2 years at Princeton, so 4 semesters.
Big time.
Very difficult.
Very hard, dude. That's a huge accomplishment. For people who don't know, like I know people who take Chinese at Princeton and it's very rigorous. So
yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry, I just had to plug you there.
Appreciate it. But I loved it. Like I learned a lot because it's so rigorous at Princeton compared to like maybe even other languages.
Yeah.
I've actually had like a pretty decent like understanding of the language and like how to speak it and like good tones and stuff like that. Right. So eventually I want to also work in China for like maybe a little bit. But obviously like life is long and things happen. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Dude, unreal. I know my girlfriend, Sarah, is Chinese. And so I was with her parents this summer and for a couple of months, they were trying to explain to me the language. I was like, dude, what is this? Like
it's so hard.
There's 5 different tones and it's just, it's really cool. And I wish I had a talent for languages. I don't know if this is a narrative that's in my head that I don't have it because I was just like not great at French. Like I learned French for like high school and Princeton, just like not very good at it. But bro, I want to give Chinese a shot. You're inspiring me here. Maybe learn a little bit of that. Cause like you said, it's probably one of the most useful languages to learn, especially in business, right?
Yeah. And even just like learning. And one thing as well for me was that like, I like learning a lot and also like challenging myself. I knew for a fact that like Chinese is probably the hardest language I could have taken. And that like, if I was like, people always, why don't you just take it after Princeton and just like learn it by the side? Like language like Chinese, there's very little chance you're going to like force yourself to learn it. Yeah. I was putting in like 10 hours a week during the semester, like learning Chinese. Like you're not going to do that after work. It's just like very unlikely, right?
Definitely not. I could
unless
confirm.
you like, unless you have like a reason for it, right? Unless you have like a family or like a girlfriend or something where it's like, okay, I see a reason why. For me, I had nothing. So I was like, there's no way I'm going to like do this myself.
Right.
So it even like, impacted the way I thought about like math because I was just like so used to memorizing characters and things. Like I think like maybe I'm just like gassing it, but
no.
I did think like I was able to grasp like really weird or really like foreign concepts like a little bit faster because I was always putting myself in these uncomfortable positions like learning Chinese where like I knew nothing about the characters, nothing about the language. Right. I think in general, the more you put yourself in these like weird situations, the faster you can learn and like that's been pretty fun. So,
bro, I don't think you're guessing it at all. I don't obviously know the research on this too well, but I'm sure there's some sort of crosstalk between learning a language and just your cognitive cognitive capacities and doing other skills, right? It's basically like anything in life. I was a psych and neuro major, and I was all about like experiential effect on your brain and what any experience does. I studied like running and how that affects your brain, bro. But like if you're learning a language or, a musical instrument or anything else, that's only going to help like your math or any other sort of thing. And I don't think you're gassing it at all. That's very, very interesting.
Yeah. And real quick, even just double down, like I read a report like my sophomore year about this. Yeah. Apparently if you teach Mandarin Chinese to a 4-year-old American kid, their math and reasoning skills like go up comparatively to like a kid who only speaks like English or English plus another like romantic language or like Germanic language. So something about like a ton of characters, a ton of memorization that like makes it really applicable to like STEM. Maybe the paper is like disputed, but I've seen a lot of papers backing that paper up as well. So pretty interesting.
So what do you think it is about the characters that translates to the math? Do you know? You said memorizing, but
so much memorization.
Okay.
And just like a lot of attention to like detail, because the characters are pretty like, they're not, if you write in simplified Chinese, they're not crazy, but they're still pretty detailed and pretty like specific.
Okay.
So you have to like learn all these different angles and these different lines and like how to like, so it's just like a very like mentally intensive language to learn. I'm sure English is as well, but I don't know because I spoke it growing up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just have my experience. Yeah.
Dude, fascinating. Learn something new every day. Then lastly, yeah, anything that's bringing you joy, just sort of outside of all these other factors, anything that you've been working on over the pandemic or not the pandemic, if you're just chilling, it's fine. You don't have to be productive, but just would love to hear anything else that you enjoy, do for fun.
Yeah, I think first and foremost is like faith. So always trying to get closer to God, just like reading the Bible, just like do my devotion, that whole thing. And I'm like, even at Princeton, I've like started to take on like a little bit more leadership in those like in that capacity when it comes to like different clubs and groups, which has been dope. Secondly, I just like in general, I love learning. Like I don't even like, so I'm always like reading something or like reading an article or like watching a YouTube video on something random. A lot of times it's finance, a lot of times it's not. So podcasts, different things like that.
Right.
So I actually don't really watch, really weird thing. I don't really watch TV shows that much.
I feel that.
But I'm always watching YouTube, whether it's like random thing that I'll never learn, like think about ever again. The fact I'm learning it seems pretty cool. So I do that a lot. Always hooping. Always gotta be hooping.
Yes,
always
sir.
Gotta be hooping. So I was watching my Miami Heat.
Yep. There you go.
Did I glitch?
You're back. No problem.
Yeah. So whether it's watching my Miami Heat play basketball or, like playing basketball myself, that's big to me. And also working out, like very, very into fitness. So
I love it, dude. Last question. What podcasts are you enjoying? Because I want to check them out. I'm a fan, obviously, of podcasts because I'm doing one right now. But any recs there, dude?
A ton. So many. Let me pull up mine. I have like I feel like an old head when I like to listen to podcasts all the time, but they're amazing.
Bro, it's confirmed an old head thing. I think you're ahead of the curve. I started getting into them more once I graduated college. Like it's just an old head experience. Just the podcast.
It's amazing though. It's amazing.
It is good.
I highly recommend listening to podcasts for anyone here. Any podcast. I think just listen to podcasts.
Expand the mind.
Listen to his podcast.
Exactly. Hey, plug the podcast. Yes, sir.
Exactly. So it depends. There's one, for example, BBC In Our Time. They have a bunch of different ones.
Okay.
There's BBC In Our Time Philosophy. That one's really good. They go like do a bunch of like philosophical questions and like theories and
write it down.
Yep. Freakonomics Radio.
I'm on it.
Very,
Heard
very
great
good.
things about that.
Amazing. Then there are a few other ones that like are a bit rogue. Like the Dave Ramsey Show is amazing for personal finance. It's a good show.
Yep.
There's also like a random one I listen to. Jocko Willink. He's like a former Navy SEAL. He has a podcast.
Bro, yes, sir. Bro, we're on the same wavelength. I've heard he's awesome. I've watched a couple of his stuff.
Fire. And last one I'll give you, I have like so many. The last one I'll give you, this one's a basketball podcast.
Yep.
It is, let me just find it real quick. They just changed names recently, so I'm trying to make sure it's the right one. Yeah, it's The Mismatch. So it's like a Ringer podcast. They just talk about basketball all the time. It's fire.
Dude. Another great basketball podcast, JJ Redick Pod.
I need to listen. Yeah,
bro, he gets everybody on there, and you hear the craziest stories of the league, dude. Yes, highly recommend.
What's it called?
It's literally called, I think, the JJ Redick podcast with his friend Tommy Bear or something like that.
Okay.
But if you type in his podcast, it'll come up. And it's on
the Old
YouTube.
Man and the Three.
The Old Man and the Three. Yeah, that's the new name.
Okay.
Give it a listen, bro. You got some great guests on there. I need him to get Bron on there because obviously I'm a Bron fan. So I need Bron on there ASAP. But
for sure.
Brother, this was awesome. Thank you so much for taking your time, in the midst of a busy Princeton schedule and just everything going on. Best of luck with everything, dude. And I really appreciate it, bro. Obviously, reach out to me whenever you need. Always here for you, dog.
Anytime. It's good to catch up.
Yes, sir. All right.